Friends, a few of you in the comments when I introduced the new Mr. Relatable steel full suspension were asking for a comparison video, a geometry comparison video between this, the new one, and the Pink Panther here. So allow me to oblige to that request right now. Just a note before we get started, I'm sharing parts between both of these bikes, such as rear shock and cranks, bottom bracket. Like this old float, this is not actually in the bike, it's just keeping it up. That's just the way it is. If you can relate, subscribe. So I think before we get too deep into it, I'll address that this, the Pink Panther, is a 650B bike, 27.5 wheel size. And the new Mr. Relatable, this is 29-inch wheel size. There's also a travel difference between these two bikes. Pink Panther was designed to be 150/150 front and rear. Mr. Relatable is 140 front and 130 rear. So definitely different categories of bikes. This, you might consider closer to a all-mountain enduro machine, and Mr. Relatable is definitely a trail bike. If you follow the channel at all, you'll know that the original 150 mil Suntour that was on this was replaced for this 160 mil RockShox Yari, which was cool because the Yari had 10 mils more travel at the same axle to crown length. So bit of a travel upgrade without changing any of the geometry on the bike. Easily the most notable difference between the two is the reach. This is 475. The first one, it's 510 mils of reach. So this is kind of a monster. I'm about 6 foot tall, but I'm all torso. I actually don't hate the reach on this, but it isn't the most playful machine in the world. This, at 35 mils less reach, definitely feels a little more home for me. Especially being a BMXer, loving riding a dirt jumper lately, this certainly feels a little more at home on the bike flick around control front. This definitely, not that I've been able to compare them side by side at like a bike park. Pink Panther feels stable because of reach and wheelbase. Mr. Relatable here feels stable because it feels more like what I would normally gravitate towards. There's definitely a few other things in the geometry that sort of like tweak the way the reach looks and feels depending on riding position that I'll mention now. Pink Panther has 20 millimeters of bottom bracket offset, and this thing has 35 millimeters of bottom bracket offset, which I think, based on my understanding of bottom bracket offset, would kind of mean this is even like, this is 10 mils shorter. And then in seated position, when you're up here cruising along, this has even shorter reach because what's the word I'm looking for? Because the virtual seat tube angle on this with the bottom bracket offset that it has is actually around like 80 degrees, where on Pink Panther it's 77. So a lot of things working to like crunch the seated position of this thing closer and closer together than what is happening on this bike. So seated on this thing's very short, seated on this is quite a bit longer than this, and then when you're standing on each, there's a 35 millimeter difference, because that's how reach is measured, from bottom bracket to head tube. Okay, that was a lot to digest. Let's talk about other stuff. Chainstay length, a lot easier to understand and try and get out in words. Pink Panther has 440 millimeter long chainstays. Monsieur Relatable has 425 millimeter long chainstays. I was sort of like talked in and convinced to do a rear end this short, and it does make the bike a little poppier, and like it feels like it'll lift and get over trail features, the type of stuff that I might want to spend a lot of time riding this thing on. Better than this, but after I spent, like, I still do believe that you get used to whatever it is you're riding. When I rode this enough in local trails, on like whatever, there was no issues. I was able to get over everything. You just get used to whatever it is you're riding. So yeah, I did the shorter triangle because it's in vogue. That's what people say you should do, and that's why I did it. I can't really manual to save my life, so I can't say I did a short triangle so that I could manual better. I still suck at them. We'll see. I really like the stability that this thing offered with its crazy long wheelbase. I don't think this is going to offer the same sort of thing. The trade-offs, like the poppiness of this is a decent trade-off for the stability of that. Holy moly, I'm just basically speaking gibberish. Okay, what else? Head tube length on Pink Panther is 135. On this, it's 120. I don't know why I did that. I don't know. Next, and this is actually the thing that made me so quickly order a second custom steel frame, and it is seat tube length. On the Pink Panther, it's 460 millimeters long, and on Mr. Relatable, it's 400. I was a little short-sighted in ordering this seat tube this long. I basically looked at what the seat tube length of the felt was and thought in my brain I wanted the seat tube to be long enough to actually hide the whole dropper seat post that I owned, which was 150 mils. So I was like, I'll just do a longer seat tube and then it'll hide it and that'll give me the look I wanted without really recognizing that the top tube was going to come across higher and it was going to give it that like really giant front end triangle look. Like I wanted these lines to almost line up, kind of like on the Norton. I have an idea that I want to cut out this top tube and put a new one in. I've got friends who can do that kind of work. They are very, very good steel fabricator friends of mine. But at the same time, these are not that expensive to get built. So I might even just have this totally remade in the same color and just do the tweaks that I want and sell this frame. I don't know. It's such an absolutely silly thing to do just to have it look the way I want it to look. But yeah. I love the look of a low slung top tube. I think it looks better, super long. Seat posts look awesome. And I want to have two bikes that definitely are different travel. I'd love to play on a longer travel bike and be able to do both wheel sizes and bring it to bike parks. And then this thing was literally built to stick around town a little more because you don't need anything this this burly for around town. This is a little more fun, a little more poppy. So I knew I wanted this. Now I need... It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But even still, I make dumb decisions regularly, and the beauty of ordering these frames from Merino is it's a $100 deposit down, and then there's a 4-month to maybe a year-long wait to actually receive it. So I just put a little bit of money on it every month, and that's the only way that I can really make stuff like this happen. So yeah, I definitely feel like I could do tricks and ride the way I've been riding the last 6 months heavily on the channel, a lot better on the new red bike than I ever could on this. I hope this was concise enough to follow. You should probably subscribe to this YouTube channel. Probably.